Hey everybody, I'm Brian Contos. I'm the Vice President and CISO with Mandiant Advantage, and welcome to Cybersecurity The Board, choosing success over the Sarlacc Pit. So let's jump right in. A little background about myself. Again, Brian Contos. I work with Mandiant, but I've been in cybersecurity for about 25 years. I've worked in over 50 countries, started with DISA and then Bell Labs, then started building a whole bunch of startups for Riptech, ArcSight, Imperva, Cylance, and a bunch of others. I've written a couple books, and I was in a cyber warfare documentary recently as well. So as all companies, big or small, public or private, must embrace cybersecurity as a key issue. With today's threat landscape, if you don't, you're not meeting your fiduciary responsibility. I love this one just because it's so simple. Look, it doesn't matter who you are, security is important. You better take note of it. If as a board you're not paying attention to this, you're not meeting your fiduciary responsibility. It's not even like you're a bad board member. You're not doing the core things that you need to do to help that organization. So you need to be armed with that detail. One of the things that we found, or I've found, speaking to these board members over time, is it's not really about cyber risk at all. It's about the financial, brand, and operational risk from cyber. There's lots of risk types we discuss. There's risks moving your company to a new location. There's risk expanding internationally, adding a new product line, making an acquisition. Cyber's just one of those. We're seeing CEOs in the news now all the time, even with power and energy companies and oil and gas companies who never used to talk about this stuff, but they're talking about cyber attacks. And I don't think it's because they woke up one day and said, cyber is really important. We really need to dig into this. I think they had to, because their board members and their stakeholders and their shareholders are saying, look, this is a topic that needs to be covered. We talk about other risks, political risk and military and terrorism and environmental issues and everything else. We just better start talking about this publicly because people care. And you're seeing it in annual reports and corporate charters, or corporate governance documents, and it shows up in all their public documents because it matters. Now, evidence measures, like other strategic business units, is becoming critical now. So if you have a CFO and you say, how much money do we have in the bank? And the response is, well, we follow best practices and PCI and this and that. It's a very wishy-washy response. They're probably not going to be the CFO very long. Basically, you want to know how much money's in the bank. Well, in cybersecurity, we've kind of been giving a pass for a while because it's very hard to calculate numbers in terms of how well are we doing? Are we trending up or trending down? Are we effective? Are we not effective? But those are the types of things that board members need to know. Are we going up or going down? Are we able to operate effectively and efficiently? And there's really like 6 basic things that I found basic things that executives require and they prioritize and are really essential. They want to make sure, one, their communication channels like email are secure. The CEO wants to know if he emails the CFO or a board member that it's secure. They want to know if they're protecting their financial systems. They want to know if their customer data and their IP is protected. They want assurances of the availability of all their critical applications and the infrastructure that supports them, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud. They want to make sure that they're safeguarding access, that not anybody can just get in. And then, of course, they want to be able to demonstrate compliance. That's it. I mean, those are the 6 things. And once you get past that area, it becomes a little less relevant into their calculus when they start looking at risks. So just keep that in mind. Here's a quote from Alexa King. Alexa's interesting because not only does she work in cyber, but she's actually also a lawyer, and she sits on several boards as well. But Alexa said, if you provide boards with evidence-based data regarding your cybersecurity posture, trends, intelligence, effectiveness, etc., they should be able to provide you with valuable input based on their broader perspectives. So basically, again, they're saying, look, you have to talk about the cybersecurity posture, but you got to look at the trends. Are we trending up? What does our threat intelligence say? How effective are our controls? And we need to be able to arm board members with this information so they can look at their broader perspective with the notion that hopefully the board members have their fingers in a lot of pots that maybe cybersecurity doesn't. And maybe your organization doesn't because they're involved with a lot of organizations. So the reason you have these members is because they have a little bit of a broader perspective in theory. So by arming them with these key points, if you will, regarding cybersecurity, and the effectiveness of the controls and what's happening on threat intel and what's happening in the horizon, that arms them with what they need. And then keep in mind, this got hit on by pretty much every single board member I talked to, which was business relevance across all industries now. I'd be hard pressed to think of one. Businesses rely on critical assets to generate revenue. Okay, I don't think that's a weird statement, but they want to generate revenue, they want to deliver services, they want to be competitive, they want to add value. So significant investment is made into the protection of these systems. They want business continuity. They want to have access to the data, customer services, critical infrastructure. Think of healthcare. You need to be able to keep things running, right? Regulatory compliance. They don't want to get sued. They don't want a class action lawsuit. They don't want the negative PR that goes with that, with the fines that come with regulatory issues and accreditations and privacy and things like that. So they want to make sure all their I's are dotted and their T's are crossed as well. Critical asset protection. My intellectual property, my customer data, these types of things. These are the crown jewels for most organizations. We have to make sure those are protected and be monitored. And finally, rationalization, optimization. Do I really understand my threats? Am I investing in the right places? Do I have tools that are sort of old and I can retire now? These are the things that I really want to know as it relates to business relevance. And again, this comes up a lot, that cybersecurity professionals don't necessarily think in terms of business relevance. A lot of the times, because they're so busy fighting fires, they're thinking of those fires. They're thinking of that ransomware, that new malware, that new botnet, that one new attack that they've been hearing about, some chatter, right? Instead of sort of that bigger picture. All those other things are critically important. But when talking to the board and communicating, business relevance has to be kept in mind. Audit committees evaluate a wide range of risks, from standardized accounting practices to the composition of boards. In cybersecurity, historically, the audit committees have lacked control, effectiveness, evidence, validation measures against threat intel, and optimization metrics for incident analysis and response capabilities. Lacking these key data points results in audit committees being less effective at measuring and managing risk. Again, it's all about those measures and all about validating. And now he says something here about validating against threat intel, which has become a key topic really in the last couple of years, is saying, look, it's not good enough just to validate my security controls against attacks that I write in Python or some shell scripts or some attack database that was given to me by a vendor, for example. What I really need to do is take the latest breaking threat intel as well, so I can know that, hey, where do we stand against these latest threats? The threat that just popped out that's specific to my industry, and it came from my ISAC or from some subscription service that I have. So measuring my controls effectiveness against the latest threat intelligence is just as important as measuring my security controls effectiveness against known sort of legacy or historic attacks. When you're talking about security validation or breach and attack simulation, again, this is something that keeps on popping up a lot in these conversations. It really comes down to a few key pillars, right? And you want to do things a little bit differently, not just better. And the idea is not a firewall that goes a little faster, an IPS that has a few more signatures, or a proxy that does this, or endpoint. This is actually a different perspective when you look at validating security controls. It's all about how can I do things like, one, identify where the gaps are across email, network, endpoint, and cloud. And hopefully when I identify those gaps, have a solution, whether it's security validation or BAS or what have you. How do I tune that tool now? Okay, here's the hole. Tell me how to fix it. How can I address that? I need something to get me to that next level. Don't just tell me where all the holes are. Then once I fix that thing, let me retest it and validate that it actually works by providing assurances. Okay, I found a hole, ABC. It says, do you want to fix ABC? This is what you need to do. I fix it, and then I test it to make sure that fix worked. I would have loved this in the early days of SIM. How fantastic would that be? You write a rule, and now I want to go ahead and test it and make sure that rule really works against a real attack. Then I want to mitigate environmental drift. Once I find that hole and fix it, I want to go ahead and test that every hour, every day, every week to make sure that it stays fixed and there's no environmental drift that's causing, from either my security team or my security devices or the IT infrastructure team or something else. IT maybe installed a proxy server. Now syslog isn't making it to my SIM. A tap was bidirectional. Now it's unidirectional. Now my IPS isn't providing value. I need to avoid that environmental drift. And when that thing that was blocking or was alerting or was detecting has stopped, I need to know right away. Then rationalizing. How do I prioritize? Where do I put my next investment? What devices can I get rid of? We're starting to even now see people that have the title like Vice President of Rationalization. And the whole title, the whole job role is about getting value from your security controls. Also, mapping and measuring. I want to make sure that what I'm doing follows the best practices, and I can map it to things like MITRE ATT&CK, OWASP, SANS, and NIST, right? Reporting and communicating, so key. Being able to not just validate your security tools in terms of their effectiveness, like all these board members have been talking about, but then being able to communicate those measures in a report that's easily understandable by a board member that might have 5 minutes a month to really consider cybersecurity. And finally, demonstrating value. Cybersecurity isn't just about stopping bad things. It should be about enabling the organization now. And I know we've kind of been talking about doing that for a very long time. But I think we're to the point now where we can say by having a strong security posture, we can make this merger and acquisition run much more smoothly. We can make this expansion into this market better. We can make our connectivity with this supply chain or this partner more stable. So again, demonstrate value. This is Julie Cullivan, again, board member with a healthcare organization, technology companies, cybersecurity companies. She says, most would argue that automated, proactive, intelligence-led approaches to cybersecurity is where we need to move as an industry. See, threat intelligence again. However, most organizations don't have the resources to maximize that value. Very true. Most organizations today don't have very large threat intel groups, or they're just a small branch of the security team. This is another case where leveraging a third party can utilize their platforms and experts to help provide a service and enable intelligence-led approach to be successful at scale. Such a key point, because this isn't just necessarily throwing products at problems. I think there's sort of this new embrace, if you will, and MSSPs and services and incident responders and professional services doing red team and purple teaming and things like that, and providing threat intelligence. That's all been around for a while. But now I think people are saying, look, we can't hire enough, we can't train enough, we can't invest in enough in our own infrastructure to develop the expertise we could get by partnering or by leveraging the service component, especially for threat intel. So definitely by working with organizations that have very robust, sophisticated threat intelligence, you're never going to pull that in-house. Even a lot of government agencies, of course, they have to rely on other agencies to provide that information to them. So again, threat intelligence, extremely important. Being able to take advantage of it from a service perspective might be something to strongly consider as well, because again, threat intelligence is a topic that is showing up in boardrooms more and more. Here's Bill Kroll. Bill and I actually wrote a book together not too long ago, but he was the former deputy director of the National Security Agency, the NSA. Bill said, so he knows a little bit about intelligence, right? So he says, having an intelligence-led approach to cybersecurity doesn't just make the security team more effective. It provides the evidence leadership needs to ensure that your goals, objectives, and priorities are aligned with their business requirements in the face of the latest relevant threats and threat actors. I love this, because he's basically saying threat intelligence is key, yes, but it provides you that evidence that leadership also needs. So when they're looking at all their business goals and all their business objectives, they know where those objectives are in terms of the relevant latest threats and threat actors. And he's basically saying, look, if you're going to do business, you have to have threat intel as a component of that, of course, or why even have security controls at all? Now, this notion of this intelligence-led approach, this is something that, again, I heard time and time again. It's the new tip of the security spear, if you will. With validation and automation, Intel has, it's really hit its stride to become that tip of the spear. But intelligence-led is all about intelligence being timely and relevant. I want to test the old stodgy stuff, the legacy stuff too, but I need the timely relevant stuff as well. I need to automate it because it's a lot of data. I need to operationalize it so I can leverage that automation, personalize it so I can see how is that relevant in my environment, with my tools, my people, my processes, everything that's good and bad about my network, right? I'm going to have things that are broken and things that are working well, and I have to make sure that I understand how well they're working in terms of that threat intel, right? I want to be able to answer questions like, are we safe from this attack that my CEO just heard about on the news, right? How will our tools respond to this attack? How will our people respond? Will our processes actually work? And then I want to be able to measure that effectiveness and report on it and trend it so I can go ahead and show my board, this is where we stand. There's no guesswork. Here's the evidence. Here's the latest threat. We've tested our tools and our people and our processes against this threat. This is what's working, this is what's not. Maybe we're preventing, but we're not alerting. Maybe we're detecting, but we're not preventing. Where are these holes that we can fill? And then based on that, I can prioritize. I can actually say, okay, this is where I need to invest. This is how we have to prioritize. Or maybe this is an area I can divest. Or this is where I can train and I can use this budget to hire more. And then I want to be able to protect in perpetuity against that threat from environmental drift like we talked about before. It's working today, and hopefully it's working next week, but it's going to work next month, next quarter. And I want to make sure it is so I get that ROI. Jay also says that boards in the C-suite are recognizing that software with a service is the future of cybersecurity. Technology-led platforms augmented by security and operations experts are delivering value via productized services. So again, another board member pointing out that you're not going to be able to do all of this in-house anymore. He says, for example, this may be utilizing software as a service through a combination of red teaming, security validation, advanced analytics, threat intelligence, where I need to continuously know the state of my controls from multiple real-time and forensic angles, where my gaps are, and how to fix them when validated against the most timely and relevant threat intelligence. So to kind of paraphrase that, using, having a platform that's accessible is key, so you can do all your own work, but having a services group, threat intel, professional services, etc., that plugs into that, where you have software with a service, that seems to be a very popular conversation that's being had now. Demonstrating operational competency. So this notion that just like we want to prove that our security tools are working, we want to prove that our security strategy is actually effective. Evidence-based communication, not assumption-based. You got to be able to prove it. At this level, working with the board, you have to be able to prove it. And they want measures. They want evidence. They want facts. They want to know about the effectiveness of your security control, not the fact that you have a security control. They want to know how you're able to prevent, detect, and respond to this threat, not that there is a threat. So what's working, what's not, what needs to be done, and in what order. They want to demonstrate trending analysis. The trends are so key. I can't overemphasize this because it's not about having coordinates. It's about having a vector. And the trend kind of shows you where you're going over time. And it's usually not a straight line. It's kind of up and curvy and back, and things are going to get better, things are going to get worse, but you need to hopefully over time be trending in the right direction. Progress specific to threat intel. I want to show that we're making an investment based on our new threat intelligence, and based on this, here's how we're actually able to address it. Here's the facts. Not, we need a new security tool, there's some bad things happening. Have that evidence. Risk to partnerships and supply chains. Again, don't just think about your internal organization, but how does this apply to the people you partner with? System health, with security being a system of multiple systems, right? Are they running? Are we getting value? Total cost of ownership and metrics, right? Effectiveness of teams and processes. It's not just about the technology. It's about the people we have and making sure that they're trained, that they're effective. And as you add new tools and remove tools and change things, you have to make sure that they're still able to operate effectively. Sometimes they need additional training. Sometimes they need additional access to information that maybe they didn't have access to before. Maybe processes need to be changed. And budget planning has to be based on facts, not theoretical bad stuff. These tests, this intelligence, they need to be based on the evidence that you're proving, that you're showing to your board. And then relevance for the C-suite and board. All this sort of demonstration of operational competency, it's so the final reports and communication that you're doing with your board are actually relevant. They actually hold merit and value for them. Karen Nortman, again, very on a board of just a very large number of companies, said companies are embracing cybersecurity services at an increasing rate. Okay, this trend will continue to intensify. Augmenting your cybersecurity controls, teams, and SaaS solutions with specialized expertise means greater security ROI and reduced risk. Okay, again, just another hit on the fact that cybersecurity services are one of the things that boards are looking at heavily as a way to augment their team, because they know it's almost impossible to scale an organization internally without some level of augmentation. Now, where that's supposed to be, is that intelligence, is that incident response? That's for your organization to decide. But it's a question about scalability and just table stakes for being able to address today's threats. Now, I'll leave you with this, just a little plug. So I've interviewed over 100 people on my podcast. It's called the Cybersecurity Effectiveness Podcast. You can find it on Spotify, iTunes, etc. It is a video podcast now. In the early days, we were just audio only. But I have the full interviews with these board members. Once again, I'm Brian Contos. Take care.